brakes.
Yeah.
They also come horribly adjusted. So if you can do a little tuning, it makes a big difference, you know?
I'm ready when you are.
This bike here sounds much bigger. What's up guys, this is James from King's Ride Shop, and today I'm going to show you how to adjust brakes on BMX bikes with 990 style brakes, or whatever you want to call these brakes. It's up to you. So first off, this is a brand new complete bike, so that's just a good spot to start with. We're going to start up here at the brake lever. Just to explain to you what the brake lever does, that's what you pull to make the brake work. But really, you can adjust the lever by loosening the clamp. You can swing it up or down depending on what's comfortable to you. Usually they're facing down because when you ride these bikes, you're standing up, just kind of in line with the angle of your arm would be that the lever points down. There's two adjustments on most brake levers on stock complete bikes. When you get into aftermarket levers, you usually only get the barrel adjuster, which is this adjuster here. What the barrel adjuster does is it basically pulls the brake a little bit. It pulls on the cable. If you unscrew the adjuster, it pulls the brake and the pads get closer to the rim, which reduces the distance the lever pulls before the pads contact the rim. If you screw it in, it increases, it gives the cable slack, the brake opens, and it goes further back to the bar. So it's really how you want the brake to feel. It's a fine-tune adjustment right there. You always want to make sure that as the adjuster goes out, you put the lock nut back against the brake perch. The second adjustment is something that you would only do if you had like small hands or a little kid riding the bike maybe, is you have this little screw right here. And what this screw does is you can screw this screw in and it will push on the lever, adjusting the lever closer to the bar, which would allow smaller hands to be able to reach and pull the lever. If you do this, obviously you're pulling the brakes, so you have to allow some slack in the cable. Sometimes you can get the slack from the barrel adjusters, which are located at the lever, and there's another barrel adjuster generally located on the frame right here of the bicycle, which you can also adjust, that does the exact same thing as the lever barrel adjuster does. This is just another way to adjust your brakes. So that's the lever. Second thing is the cable. This is a We The People. It comes with what they call a high slick cable. It's a wound housing with a Teflon lining inside. So the wire inside the cable, the actual brake cable, the wire inside the housing, the actual brake cable slides through this Teflon coated housing pretty well, which pulls back here. It pulls this straddle cable hanger. The straddle cable hanger or brake cable has another cable here. It splits one to each side of the brake caliper itself. A cool little trick, if you're going to change a flat tire, all brakes, generally, some on both sides of the brake caliper, but also usually just on the left side of the bike, the non-drive side, you can squeeze the brake together and pull the straddle cable out, and that allows the brake caliper to open and your tire to pass through while it's inflated. So if you need to take your tire on and off to change a flat, or for whatever reason put in your car, you can open up your brake caliper by doing that. We're gonna hook it back up. When you do hook it back up, always pump the brake a couple times, help center it. Now on most bikes, when you get them out of the box, or if you're installing a new brake, a lot of people put too much, or factories or wherever the bike comes from, there's too much return spring. Now this brake has a spring on each arm. Each arm has its own spring, so you need to adjust the tension. There's a spring retainer and the mounting bolt. The mounting bolt holds the spring in place, so you need a 5mm wrench or whatever wrench holds the mounting bolt, and then the retainers, whatever's right below it. Some are a 13mm slot. This one's a 17mm, some are 15, it just depends. Some brakes even have the spring exposed. You can see the spring, which works fine. Anyway, you hold the retainer with the wrench, you loosen the mounting bolt, and you can feel the spring go against the wrench. You want to reduce that spring. You literally only want enough spring for the arm to come back off the rim. because any more spring than that, you're pulling against that spring when you brake, making your braking force go into that instead of into the rim. And then you hold the spring where you want it and you tighten that mounting bolt. It holds it in place and you can feel the reduction of the spring. As you pull the brake, you can feel it pulls so much smoother, cleaner, and easier. This bike already adjusted the other side, but you would also repeat the same process on the other arm so that the spring tension is equal on both sides. Now, with this being said, if your brakes still suck, it's okay. There's little things you can do relatively cheap to make your brakes not suck. One thing I highly recommend is if you change your cable to a linear cable. A linear cable has a different type of housing. The housing can bend better without collapsing on itself, which makes the cable slide smoother. Odyssey makes linear cables. They make different types of them. They make the SLS, they make the original linear. Whichever one, if it's an Odyssey linear cable, it's gonna work really well. I recommend them. I put them on a ton of bikes. They always work well. That's an easy upgrade. Anything past that would be maybe changing to a fancier lever with less flex, or a brake caliper with less flex. The We The People bike does come with a nice brake caliper, so these are pretty dialed right out of the box. So now I'm going to show you an aftermarket setup. So this is an aftermarket brake setup. This is my personal bike. I run a gyro. I'm one of those cool guys. So we'll start out at the top. This is an Odyssey M2 monolever. I like the medium, whatever size lever you want. They make it in small. They also have like a trigger version, I think. I like this one. It comes with the upper cable. If you run super tall bars or short bars, they do make different length upper cables, so try to grab the right size cable. But stick with the Odyssey stuff. It's pretty good. There's other brake levers designed for gyro and cables and things like that. I'm not gonna get into detail. Most of them, if you adjust them right, they work pretty well. I like the Odyssey one. I use the Odyssey gyro. Same thing, Shadow makes a good gyro. Maybe some other people, but I like this one. The Shadow one's cool. And then I like to use the Odyssey London mod. There's a few other companies that make similar dual cable setups. If you get the Odyssey Linear Slick SLS cable, you can take the cable out and it has perfect cable ends for the gyro, and then you can use the housing to make these. If you're watching this and you're trying to do some advanced brake setup and you never have done it before, hopefully this video helps, but I do recommend bringing it in to somebody that is dialed with putting brakes on. But you want to cut these wires, go back. This is the real reason I wanted to show you this brake setup. Is I use the Odyssey spring-filled brake, which is Odyssey's entry-level brake. But the reason I use it is because it is really stiff. It works well. It's lightweight, and they use, instead of a spring that is mounted around the post on each arm, they use a spring in the center of the brake. This spring right here is in the center of the brake, and that is your return spring. So when you pull the brake, this is pulled open and it pulls on the upper part of the brake, which pulls the pads away from the rim. And I like that setup. It's kind of self-centering and super simple to use. What I do, because I have a gyro, so when you pull the lever, you have to pull all this cable. So you're dragging this cable through all this housing and stuff. And even though I use really nice cables and it has less resistance, it still creates some friction and resistance. The spring-filled brake doesn't have a ton of return spring because of this, which I like. I don't want to pull against the spring. I even go as far as I take this spring off the brake and I hook one into a spoke or whatever, and I grab the other side with some needle nose and I stretch the spring just a little bit so it still wants to spring back together, but so it kind of loses some of its spring. And then I put the spring back on the brake, and it makes my lever really easy and light to pull. Not a lot of resistance, has a really good feel and modulation to it. So the brakes work well, the pads contact with the rim well, and you can do cool brake tricks with a gyro that works really well. So thanks, Odyssey.